for another week of informational writing, and how in the world are we going to get this paper up and running. This week our focus is going to be on how we evaluate sources. So if you're wondering, what are we going to do with that list of 10 sources that we made a few days ago, a few lessons ago, today's the day that we figure out what we're going to do with those sources. But before we get into it, let's take a quick look at the Corgi Cam and see what Piper's up to today. It's a beautiful day here, and I'm sure she's doing something very productive, like gardening, or maybe she's making some kind of, fort in the backyard. I can't really be sure of what she's doing until we check on the Corgi Cam. So let's go take a look at the Corgi Cam. So for today's focus on evaluating sources, which is our target for today, I can evaluate my sources. The first question we want to look at is, are my sources reliable? And the second question we want to look at is, do my sources contain the information I need for my research? Now, we haven't really figured out our research question exactly. We have some questions and some ideas. But today what we're trying to do is just take a quick look at the sources that you've collected so far, that you had in your list of 10, to see, are there any that we can get rid of right now because maybe they're not the sources that I need. Here is a list of tips. The first thing you want to do is check the publication date. If your information is really old, it might not be the best information that you have available to you. The second tip is to choose websites from colleges or universities and familiar organizations. Such organizations might include things like PBS or museums or professional organizations or even research facilities. These first two tips are what I would call level 1. Everyone should be doing these when they are first looking at their sources. The next step: is this text more informational or more opinion-based? For an informational writing piece that we're doing, we want to include information more than opinion. So you want to figure out if your sources are doing that as well. You want to look at what is the tone. Next on your list is notice when a claim is made. Just as you will have to make a claim, you want to look for claims in the writing of your sources. So notice when a claim is made, and really important, check if support is given or when support is lacking. These two bullet points are what I would call level 2. And they're to be completed once you've done level 1. That sort of makes sense. Once you have that figured out, you're going to want to start to compare sources. Look for point of view and any inaccuracies. So if somebody's just giving their point of view and they're not supporting it with any details, or you're finding information that isn't accurate, that's a kind of a red flag to figure out if that source is going to be one that you want to use. And finally, do background checks. What does that mean? Does that mean all these authors have a life of crime? No. What it means is that you should figure out if there are any biases. Are there any biases? Are these authors coming from a certain organization where they're trying to make a certain point for some gain for themselves? You also want to research the authors for validity. For example, if you're doing research and the person writing the article is not an expert, then you want to double check and make sure that this is a valid source. This is a source that has accurate information and it's a source that can be trusted. These are level 3 steps. So if we go to the sources a couple of the sources that I looked up for my topic, I want to show you how to go through these different tips and levels in order to figure out, is this a good source? So you can see the source. I'm just going to write the title of the source really quick. I'm not really taking notes yet. I'm sort of just evaluating my sources. When I asked you to look up the sources, your list of 10, you're just kind of glancing at them or skimming them, but not really doing any kind of note-taking yet. So now we're going to take it a little bit more in depth to look at them. Okay, so How Can Frogs Tell Us About the Environment? And this is by Karen Mihailo. Now, if I'm going through my steps, first of all, I check the publication date. Usually on websites, the publication date, if it's not right with the article's title, you can scroll to the bottom of the page and you can see maybe some information about when it's updated. If you look over here, it says 2020, all rights reserved. So that could mean that the website itself is updated, but it doesn't necessarily tell me much about the information in the article. But let's assume it's current because that's what it says on the bottom of the page. The next thing I'm looking at, so I've checked the publication date, and I guess we could say it's current because all I see right now is 2020. Choose websites from colleges, universities, and familiar organizations. I am looking at the name of the website here, and it looks like petsonmom.me. Petsonmom.me, I can see up here in my URL, animals.mom.me. Okay, right off the bat, I know this is not a college or university. It's not an organization I've ever heard of. It's not PBS, something that has a lot of authority behind it, or a museum. I have a feeling this is maybe some moms who wrote about different topics. I don't know for sure, but I'm maybe guessing from the URL and the title of the website. So right now, this is not a super authoritative article, so it might be one I might want to just get rid of because it doesn't have that authority behind it. But let's stick with it and see what we find. Is the text more informational or more opinion-based? So as I scroll down and I read a little bit about it, nearly 4,000 different types of frogs exist. Frogs are found on every continent except Antarctica. They are important indicators of the health of their environments because they're extremely sensitive. Ooh, whoops. Sorry, I went a little crazy. I am going to put down indicators because that is something that I was interested in finding out. So indicators of health of environment. And I'm doing this very fast. I'm not even spelling everything out. It's just a little note to say, hey, this article does have something that's sort of related to my topic. And I scroll down. What I like about this article is that it has these great nonfiction text features of the headings. So I can say, ooh, this is about pollution absorption, about certain populations, chemical contamination. So it is pretty well organized in that way. And then what can frogs tell us? And then I notice, oop, that's the end of the article. So there isn't a ton here to begin with. It is informational, however. It's not opinion-based. The tone is pretty straightforward and direct. In terms of a claim, it's kind of explaining how the environment can impact frog populations and that they're declining. And she does give some support for that. What I notice is she doesn't have a works cited at all. I don't know where her evidence came from. So for me, that's a problem because if you're going to provide information, you should always include your sources where you got that information. So this is kind of an informational article. It doesn't really have a lot of meat to it or a lot of evidence from sources that I can tell where the evidence came from. So as I look at my levels here, there is a claim, there is some support. The support that I see lacking is the list of sources that this author used. And then if I compare sources, let's say I jump over here to North American Monitoring Program. Okay, right already I can tell the difference between these two sources. The contact for this information is Evan Grant, who has a PhD and is a research wildlife biologist. If I look at the information about the author of the other article, Karen Mahalo, she's been a writer since 2009. She's a professional dog groomer and certified in canine massage therapy. So the other article that was next on my list has more authority because it's an actual research wildlife biologist who is responsible for putting it together. You can see it's got headings just like the other article, but it's more scientific. It's associated with the USGS, Geological Survey, and it has more data. It has actual quantitative data included in its setup. Tells how they collect the data, how they review the data. So this is obviously very, very scientific, and would probably be a much better source for me to use. It is from a reliable website. It is informational. And as I compare these two sources, and I'm going to say, which one's better? Ooh, boy, there's really no contest right now that this second source is going to be better in terms of providing evidence and quality research. What this does is it helps us evaluate sources. Is this source a keeper, or is it one that you're going to say, it's not worth my time to read it and take notes on it?